Detroit Become Human raises many thought-provoking questions on a series of academic studies, like engineering, philosophy, and psychology. The player is forced to make tough decisions throughout the game, and each of us as players have to determine for ourselves if the androids we play as are living creatures or just robots. But consciousness is a pretty heavy theme to tackle, and so I apologize for the tease, but I want to save a lesson on consciousness for another game in a future episode. Today then, I want to focus more specifically on the physical design of Connor, Marcus, and Kara, and explore why so many players end up preserving, caring, loving, and rooting for these three by the game's end. In the game world of Detroit, these robots were designed to integrate into everyday human life in as seamless a way as possible by making them as close to human as can be. But that's only the first layer, and a more meta layer lies below, because in our real world, us as humans actually playing the game, these three androids are taking advantage of our psychological tendency towards anthropomorphism. So today, in this episode of Psychology of Gaming, the series where we look at how psychological principles are worked into games and how games can affect us psychologically, we take a look at anthropomorphism, its evolutionary purpose, and how Detroit's androids take advantage of this principle not only with the in-game humans around them, but also us, the human, holding the controller. So the focus of today's video is really on social robots in both the in-game world and our real-life world. But in order to understand their design, we first must understand the psychological concept of anthropomorphism, because it's what makes human robots viable. You've almost certainly experienced the effects of anthropomorphism in your life, because it's essentially the act of taking human characteristics, human physical features, and human emotions, and applying them to non-human beings or objects in order to make them more relatable. In other words, it's the tendency of people to try to humanize things that aren't humans in order to build meaningful bonds with them. Humans have a long history of doing this, and it's prevalent now more than ever. All it takes is one look at popular entertainment to confirm this. Currently, the Walt Disney Corporation is arguably the most dominant force in the entertainment world, and many of their most popular franchises stem from anthropomorphized objects. The go-to is obviously Mickey Mouse, a mouse who has been redesigned to walk, talk, think, and feel just like a human. Because of the human element to the character, it allows people to more easily connect with him and for him to have a cultural meaning in our lives. Humans are social creatures, and we actively seek out bonds with other humans, and by making other objects or animals human-like, you increase the odds of establishing a connection with the audience of that character. There are tons of anthropomorphic characters, from WALL-E to BoJack Horseman to Sly Cooper to Wilson to Bender the Robot to SpongeBob SquarePants to Ratchet & Clank, and many, many more. All of these characters are obviously not human, but they have gained significant status within American culture because they share human elements that we can relate to. Not only are many of these designed with human-like physical features, but they also have distinct personalities and motivations that we can understand. In fact, in many cases, if a story is told in a human way and is able to draw out our emotions, then a lot of the time we stop viewing the animal or object for what it is and instead view it as being distinctly human. Any non-human animal or object that behaves like a human is anthropomorphized, and if the character's personality is of mass appeal, then companies stand to make tons of money from it. It's a big reason why the Disney company is as lucrative as it is, and why they've enjoyed so much success and growth. But it goes beyond entertainment. Think back to your childhood days when you had dolls or action figures or Legos, and remember how many of them you gave names to. In a way, the childlike wonder of imagination propelled you to create personalities or identities for these inanimate objects. But even as we grow up and abandon our childhood toys, this tendency still remains. Most commonly, this anthropomorphic tendency manifests in adults when they give names to their everyday objects, and a lot of the time, it seems to be their car. I mean, think about it. I'm sure someone you know has named their vehicle, and how it may even be you. We also tend to anthropomorphize pets. We say a dog is happy when we perceive their faces as smiling, although in reality, the dog is probably just reacting to a stimulus in order to gain a reward, either being pet or fed a treat. Pet owners probably aren't too keen on accepting that though. Our pets are extensions of us, and we love to view them as having distinct emotions, just like humans. The truth of whether pets feel actual emotion is still up for debate, but the fact that it's even an argument on its own is a sign of how ingrained anthropomorphizing is in the human mind. So why does this tendency in humans exist? What are the benefits of anthropomorphizing creatures and objects that has seen this trait carry onward throughout the evolutionary process? It can be said that humans anthropomorphize a lot because it's a simple way to assign meaning to random events, and our brains crave simple answers. If a light keeps flickering in a house at midnight, it's way easier to ascribe that event to a human-like entity, a ghost. There's almost always a technological answer to why the light bulb is flickering, but it's easier to just say it's a ghost than it is to do full research and electrical checks to find out the factual reason. However, I would say creating simple answers is just one reason we anthropomorphize, and I'd say the biggest reason is the fact that we as humans are social creatures. We crave human interaction, even if we love to meme about how we don't. There's a reason that solitary confinement is one of the worst things you can receive in prison, and it's because the mind deteriorates quickly without stimulus from other people. Because of our need for interaction, not only to enrich our own lives, but also to ensure breeding, humans have become extremely adept at recognizing facial patterns and emotions in order to have the best chance of forming and maintaining meaningful relationships. One of the repercussions from this is that humans tend to seek out and see human elements even in objects that are distinctly not human. If we reach a point where we view something else as having its own consciousness, then we feel a genuine connection to it, and it makes us view it more favorably. And as we can see, the more quality relationships you have in your life with other people, usually the happier you are. The need for connection and interaction is what has allowed the tendency towards anthropomorphizing to continue in each subsequent generation. And now we're reaching a point where in our real world, technology allows humans to create complex AI systems that can make robots appear to think and act like a human, and Detroit's androids are an extension of that. Social robotics is one form of engineering in which humans attempt to create robots that can be assimilated into human culture because they have the ability to be anthropomorphized with ease. The hope is that by building machines that humans can empathize with, they can be more easily accepted into culture to improve our lives and make a lot of people really rich in the process. In 2019, we're already seeing glimpses of human-like robots with machines like Sophia the Robot, built by Hanson Robotics. Now, Sophia isn't capable of free will or acting on emotion, but her artificial intelligence is still super complex and pushes the boundaries for what technology can currently do. She's also designed to look human in just about every way, so that people can accept her more easily as one of their own. Of course, Sophia's designers, as well as other social robot engineers, have to be careful to avoid the uncanny valley, the phenomena that occurs when robots or wax sculptures appear to be perfect designs of humans, making us as real people feel really uneasy. And if you want to learn more about the Uncanny Valley, after this video, be sure to check out Psychology of Gaming Episode 2, done by yours truly, to learn more about it. But anyway, this brings us to Detroit Become Human, where CyberLife, the company responsible for the mass production and integration of androids, has become one of the top tech companies in the world because they cracked the code on how to simulate humanity to near perfection. In one of the game's collectible magazines, it is written that CyberLife originally created androids with perfect faces, and this left people feeling creeped out, that Uncanny Valley thing I just mentioned. And so they retooled the physical design to make the androids appear genuinely human while maintaining some perfect qualities such as really infatuating voices. The company struck a good balance between making a perfected machine while also simulating flaws within humanity, and this allowed for the widest margin of social acceptance possible within reason. Now, not everyone in Detroit Become Human loves androids. In fact, many despise them. But their mere presence walking around society suggests that as a whole, androids have been psychologically accepted as a part of the everyday life. This is in part due to their ability to be anthropomorphized by accepting humans, despite the fact that they are just androids. Humans can project themselves, their thoughts, and their emotions onto these androids, and the complexity of the robot's AI allows them to respond intelligently without the illusion ever being broken. We see this especially early on with Marcus and Carl. Carl, of course, knows that Marcus is a machine, but the complexity of the android's AI has convinced the older gentleman that something more must exist, a sense of self. Keep in mind, this is established before Marcus even goes rogue, and all of his programs are still intact. What this means is that Carl has anthropomorphized Marcus. He's placed certain expectations onto the robot and even urges him to discover his own identity through painting. Carl knows his time is almost up, and he believes that Marcus will have to think on his own and learn to protect himself.
One day I won't be here to take care of you anymore. You'll have to protect yourself, make your choices, decide who you are and want to become. This world doesn't like those who are different, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you who you should be.
He truly believes that Marcus is a living being even before the CyberLife creation goes rogue. Carl has clearly formed a strong connection with Marcus in the absence of anyone else besides his drug-addicted son, and this has led him to conclude that Marcus is capable of feeling and thinking on his own. Another example of this comes in the form of the relationship between Todd and Alice. Remember that spoiler warning now, by the way. Seriously, if you don't want this game spoiled for you, you need to pause the video or turn away or do something. But anyway, later in the game, we learn that Alice has been an android the whole time, and even if we as players didn't know it early on, Todd did. He knew that Alice was a purchase of his own in order to cope with the fact that his failures led to his wife and daughter leaving him. But yet, in the cutscenes early on in Kara's journey, we witness Todd acting as if Alice is actually a living being. He tells Kara to care for her, to cook for them as a family, and ultimately, he takes out a lot of his trauma and pent-up rage on her, which clearly represents his resentment with his real daughter's rejection. But the reality remains that Alice is an android designed to act as a human. She has sensations that simulate hunger, but of course she doesn't actually eat. She expresses the emotions of fear, but it's done through complex programming. And she relies on Kara to care for her because her program identifies her as being dependent as a child would. But despite all of this, Todd has fully anthropomorphized Alice, and substituted her into his world as a surrogate daughter as if she was fully human. Finally, one last example of humans anthropomorphizing androids in-game is when Hank makes an offhand comment to Connor at the eating club. As the two approach the club's entrance, Hank remarks about how the joint features the sexiest androids in the city, and so it's no wonder that Connor wanted to come there. Hank is projecting the human desire for sexual pleasure onto a robot. It's a small detail, but it's there, and it's anthropomorphizing. Of course, 2 out of 3 of these examples are done before any of our 3 playable characters become deviants, meaning they break through their program and apparently become conscious of themselves, much like humans are. Throughout the adventure, all 3 of our characters are able to become deviants, yet Marcus is the only one who is forced to become one. Both Kara and Connor can end up staying machines. Deviants raise the philosophical question of the game. Are these sentient androids the same as humans, therefore deserving of the same rights as humans? Of course, like I mentioned earlier, that's not really the focus of this video. Instead, I want to highlight the fact that the game never outright states an official answer to this question. It is you, the player, who is allowed to decide if the 3 deviants are alive in the same way as humans, or even if 2 of them should become deviants at all. You are allowed to make these choices for yourself and follow them to their logical conclusions. You get to choose if Connor abandons his mission and becomes deviant or stays a machine. You get to choose if Kara intervenes with Todd's violence towards Alice. You get to choose what kind of person Marcus should be. You get to choose if these androids are really alive and cognizant, or if they're just running off of broken programming scripts. And the funny thing about that is, just like the humans in-game like Hank and Todd and Carl, we as the players, actual humans, we tend to view these robots as humans as well. We, just like those characters, anthropomorphize the androids. Taking a look at the game's flowcharts, we can see percentage breakdowns for what path players from all over the world took. And the numbers are almost always skewed towards viewing androids as humans and acting accordingly with it. When Kara is given the choice to break her programming or remain a robot, 97% of players decided to empathize with Alice and protect her from Todd, despite the fact that Kara's programming heavily fights against you doing this. It's a projection of our humanity onto this robot. I mean, of course we have to intervene, right? Alice is in danger, we have to protect her. When it comes to Connor's choice to remain a robot or become deviant, 75% of players chose to free him from his programming. We've spent the whole game learning to like Connor and juggled the difficult choices he has to make. Those tough decisions have led us to empathize with the character, and so when it comes time to decide if he's human or not, it's only natural for us to view him as one of us. On top of that, when one of our characters falls into danger, it elicits an emotional response from us, as we do everything we can to try to save them from dying. But they're just robots. They can't die. Right? We've anthropomorphized these characters because doing so allows us to make the choices for them and place ourselves into what is simply a computer program with the ability to walk and talk. The game kind of nudges us towards these decisions by playing on our own morality and tendency to characterize non-human objects. It's telling that so many players end up going down these paths despite the game offering equal opportunities to not project our human nature onto these robots. It's a meta commentary on so many levels. Can robots be sentient, or is it just an illusion created through programming? Does cyberlife really want to aid humanity, or are they just preying on our psychological tendency to get rich? Is anthropomorphizing robots important for the evolution of humanity, or will it be our undoing? Players are forced to consider all of these questions while playing Detroit Become Human, but there's no denying that many of us ended up choosing to view Kara, Connor, Marcus, Luther, Alice, North, Simon, Josh, and the other androids as more than machine. The game masterfully displays our tendency to anthropomorphize and make us think deeper about the nature of humanity in the process. It's a brilliant game, and I'd urge anyone to give it a go. In the end though, there's no way to deny that we as humans seemingly can't help but to project emotions, feelings, and experiences onto non-human creatures and entities, and Detroit Become Human expertly and purposefully proves it. Well everyone, that takes us to the end of today's episode of Psychology of Gaming. I hope you enjoyed it, as I know I certainly did. This was definitely one of my favorite topics to cover so far in the series, and I urge you to go back and check out the rest of the playlist. I'm sure I've covered a game you like. And by the way, if you want something else to wrap your brain around, or just listen to in the background, check out my 2.5-hour critique of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing for more. Follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp. And as always, have a nice day and take care.